Gentlemen, introduce yourself and where you're from, and then the time is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, commissioners and the staff of Land Use Services. You've been really terrific with helping us put this together, and this represents a tremendous amount of effort on everyone's part, and we're most appreciative of it. So thank you so very much. I'd like to start our PowerPoint now. There we go. Oh, pardon. Yes, my name is Steve Thank you. My name is Steve Bardwell. I am a member of the 3rd District Dark Sky Committee. I am also the president of the Morongo Basin Conservation Association, and I am a practicing architect. I practiced architecture here in this county for 45 years. So, and Luke?
Hi, my name is Luke Sabala. I'm a retired geophysicist, a physical scientist. I used to work for Joshua Tree National Park. I'm actually the one that brought the IDA designation to Joshua Tree National Park. But right now, I'm not speaking on behalf of the park, and this is not about the night sky.
Thanks so much, Luke. Yes, so this is, as I said, we're so glad to have this workshop here and so appreciative of the time to be able to do this. So here's a photo of San Bernardino as seen from up in the San Bernardino Mountains. We chose this photo because it illustrates the magnitude of the impact of exterior night lighting. And it gives a good sense of the scope of it and the scale of it. And it's also a good slide that it shows the portions of the city and the county that are well illuminated with lighting. And in the foreground, you can see those portions of the county that have a darker ambient light situation. This workshop is important for the purposes of bringing awareness to the issue of night lighting. And that is the most, one of the real benefits of this workshop is just being able to publicize the importance of this and getting the word out to people. It's also about education in terms of understanding what it means and how the various terminology that's used, it's a bit of a new lexicon that people need to become familiar with this. And it's also an attempt, because with this education, the whole idea is how to create a well-conceived light trespass ordinance that will achieve the 3 main topics that we feel are most important here, which is energy, conservation of energy, safety and security. This ordinance will provide for a more safety and security within our communities, and health, the health benefits of having lighting controlled. So these are we're referred to as the Dark Sky Committee, but these 3 issues are the main issues that we feel are the real gist of what this ordinance will help achieve. So this committee was formed nearly 11 years ago under the then supervisor Neil Derry, subsequently picked up under Supervisor James Ramos, and now the torch is being carried by our current supervisor, Don Rao. And it's really been through their support that we've gotten to this point, as well as a tremendous amount of effort that's been expended by members of the community. This effort has also been supported by the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center in 29 Palms. They're very much in favor of it, as well as Joshua Tree National Park have been in support of it as well. It's important to say this now, that this is not a new ordinance. This is going to be an updated ordinance. This is this original ordinance under the same 83.07 code section was adopted in 2007. And I think it's important to keep in mind the changes that have happened since 2007. I remind everyone that it was in 2007 that the iPhone was first released. The whole question now of there's been a lot of changes since 2007. A lot of changes technologically and subsequently to the entire way of life. So this is really something I think to keep in mind. When the iPhone was released, there was really no concern about the possibility of there being damage to people's ability to sleep by having too much screen time, being exposed to blue lights. So this is something there's been a real change. Another stat which I think is important to keep in mind in thinking about our energy is in 2007, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere was 383 parts per million. Today, it's nearly 419 parts per million, nearly a 10% increase in CO2 gases within the atmosphere. So doing things to be able to address this growth of carbon dioxide is a component of the energy savings that we're looking to do. So the ordinance as proposed is going to be requiring the use of LED technology. Likewise, back in 2007, the use of LEDs was much more minimum. It was there, but it wasn't as it is now when you go into any Home Depot store or hardware store. The majority of the light bulbs in many of these stores will be LEDs, and it's getting more and more difficult to even find an incandescent bulb. Likewise with LEDs, another advantage with them is you can control the light temperature. And during our lighting demonstration that we'll show shortly, we'll start to give you an indication of the difference in the color of the light that an LED can create, something which you could not do with other types of lighting sources. Included this slide to show the kind of information that one can expect to find when looking at a light fixture or a light bulb or a light source. Currently, in the current code, all of the measure of illumination is based on the equivalent wattage of an incandescent bulb. Well, no longer does that work. I mean, as I say, it's getting difficult to even find an incandescent bulb these days. So it made me think of, as an architect, people talk about blueprints. Well, blueprints were something back in the early 1900s, which was the way that things were copied, and you had a blue background with white lines. It's called a blueprint, but it's no longer used that way. So the idea of calling things, expressing things in terms of wattage is, in terms of relating to an incandescent light, is something it's going to go by the wayside. And now things need to be thought wattage for the equivalent amount of illumination between an LED versus an incandescent light is significantly different. So you get much more illumination or lumens. This is something that you'll see on a package here. It gives you a sense of how many lumens are produced by a particular light source. Also within LEDs, something that you did not have with incandescent lights, is now you can select an LED that has a different color temperatures. Anywhere from a very warm tone light down in the red spectrum, which would be in the neighborhood of 2,000. Things are measured in terms of degrees Kelvin, which is a measure of the color temperature of a light. So the warmer tones down closer to 2,000, 2,200 degree Kelvin is a very warm tone. Then you get up into the blue tones, 5,000, 6,000 degree Kelvin, which is a very, very intense light. And this is the wavelength of light that can start to become very problematic in terms of health issues, which we'll talk about in a bit. So this information is readily available on packaging, so when one is going to look at a package, this is for a particular light fixture. You'll note this light fixture has the IDA symbol on it, International Dark Sky Association, which gives their certification that this is a shielded light fixture, meaning that the light does not extend upwards, it extends below a horizontal plane, thereby controlling where the light is happening. Just some more information here. This is a typical layout from that you'll find this one we got in our local Home Depot, and this is something one going in and this does exactly what we're talking about. I was talking about. You can see the warmer tones up to the bluer tones, and if you want to get an actual physical sense of it, there's a display in many of these stores where you can push a button and it'll show you what the different type and color of light looks like. Yes.
Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with this. This light fixture that you're talking about that is IDA approved, is there a replaceable LED in it, or this is a fixture with the LED in it, and when the LED burns out in 1,000 hours, then you throw the whole thing away?
No, you buy a new bulb.
Okay, so there's a bulb or fixture or plug-in or something in addition to that.
Yeah, you would buy a bulb for this. It looks exactly like it would look exactly like an incandescent light.
Right.
It screws in exactly the same way. There's absolutely no difference. No difference in the fixture itself and how it holds the light source.
And sunlight is where on that?
Sunlight is going to be in the neighborhood of 5,000 degree Kelvin, I think. Is
Actually
that
higher.
even higher?
Yeah, even higher.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah, but it's worthwhile, your question about if you can replace the bulb. Some fixtures will have a set LED driver, they call it, within there, which cannot be replaced. But many of them can. Many light fixtures use a conventional base, so you can just screw in an LED bulb.
Okay. Very
So
good.
there's
Thank you.
no big change on that. Yes, one can get a pretty good sense of this, and there are a lot of options now in terms of, as I said, going out and taking a look at things. So you can see for yourself, because it's very important to, when just conceptually thinking about it, it helps a lot to actually see it in person. This is a slide which we put together. This was extracted from the International Dark Sky Association website, which starts to show the kind of degree of order of magnitude of the amount of energy that is by utilizing unshielded light, meaning light that is going up into the sky, up above this horizontal plane. The amount of energy that tends to represent in terms of dollars, and so when looking at this now, this slide I checked with the IDA just yesterday, and this slide needs to be updated at this point. It was last done in I think 2015, and since then there has been quite a change, and people are moving towards LED lighting. It is not nearly the unusual situation that you would have found 20 years ago. Now you see people are going, and consequently less energy is being spent to power per watt for, or per lumen, I should say, for exterior lighting. Less energy is being done. But at the same time, there's a trend to have more exterior lighting. So it's more efficient, but people are using more exterior lighting. So what it amounts to, there's approximately 640,000 households in San Bernardino County. So, I mean, looking at the amount of money that would be saved per year, you're in the millions of dollars within San Bernardino County. It's not insignificant. And with the benefits that this will provide towards addressing climate change and our damage to the planet that we all live on, I think is worth thinking about. I've took this shot just to show when people go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a store, you'll be exposed to a multitude of different types of light fixtures. Most of these light fixtures, as you can see on there, if you look on the top left corner of this fixture, you can see that most of them are unshielded fixtures. You can see the source of the light source directly through there. While there might be a lid that prohibits some of the light from going straight up, much of the light is going out horizontally as well. If you look down at the bottom right portion of that images, you can see shielded light fixtures where you cannot see the light source, and the light is being directed downward, which is, this will provide, as you'll see, we'll show in a minute here, a much safer and more security on this. Yeah, good. Go ahead, Luke.
Just a final thought on energy conservation. At nighttime, the primary source of electrical power is fossil fuel. Gas-fired combined cycle plants produce the energy. The demand has to meet the production. Now, there's not a guy at Edison that's flipping a switch and he sees more demand and turns the power up. That happens automatically. The grid adjusts. But predominantly at nighttime, fossil fuel is what provides electricity. Hoover Dam doesn't provide enough power to meet the needs of California because it's got to share its power with Arizona and Nevada. There's no more nuclear power plants. The sun is not there, so there's no solar. We're a long ways away from battery, utility scale battery backup, very long ways away from this. By adopting this shielded light ordinance, people can use a reduced wattage to get the same effect, and if they use LED, they're going to reduce their power consumption at night, which is fossil fuel based. If this ordinance is adopted, you, the county, would be at the forefront of energy conservation and greenhouse gas reductions. As soon as California Energy Commission gets on board with this, they're going to require all counties and incorporated cities to do this. I mean, it's the only way that they're going to be able to meet their renewable energy portfolio standard. That's the only way. And remember, fossil fuel at nighttime, that's what gives you the electrical energy, and this would help reduce greenhouse gases. You're right on the verge of being at the forefront of energy conservation. Did you have a comment or? Okay. Every single one of us has experienced light trespass.
One second.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were waiting toward the end for comments, but is it okay if we?
If it's germane to where he's at and you'll forget, then let's do it now.
Sure, sure.
What other jurisdictions have adopted something similar and seen reductions in greenhouse gas emissions?
I'm sorry, well, I couldn't quite.
Are there any, I'm sorry, is there any other jurisdictions that have adopted something similar and seen or realized greenhouse gas emissions?
Not to my knowledge. There are other areas that have adopted light ordinances. There are other municipalities that have adopted light ordinances that require the shielding and reduce wattage bulbs. We're kind of too new into this to really see what the greenhouse gas reductions are going to be. But believe me, it'll be significant in the future if everybody gets on board.
You got it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, anything else?
Keep going.
Okay. So, how are we doing on time? By the way, I just want to make sure that we're okay on time. So, everybody has experienced light trespass.
1 second. I'm curious also. Where are we on time?
We're at
Looks to me like you're okay. Keep going.
So ignorance is bliss, I guess, in this case. Okay, everybody has experienced light trespass, nuisance lighting, and extreme glare when they drive at night. The light from oncoming vehicles trespasses right through your windshield, right into your eyes, and it creates nuisance light. It's actually a hazard, and forbid if they forget to turn down their high beams. You're forced to look over to the right side of the road at the fog line, and just so you can see the road. This is a prime example of light trespass. People in this county use lighting that's brighter than that, especially if it's high-pressure sodium, mercury vapor, or metal halide, to light their properties. And it's unshielded, and that's a prime example of light trespass. So anyway, we can talk a little bit more about the safety here. So your eye mimics the aperture of a camera lens. In low light situations, you have your pupil dilates and you can only see in a low light situation. You don't even have fine detail in a low light situation. You can see, but you don't see and pick out the fine detail. As soon as your eyes encounter a bright light source, they constrict, the pupils constrict. Now all you see is the bright light source. You don't actually have no low light detail anymore once you encounter a bright light source. This is an example of light trespass, how your eyes would act if you encounter bright light trespass. Your eye during the day operates somewhere around in the middle because there's so much ambient light that there's absolutely no shadows. Well, there are shadows, but there's so much reflection of light off the ground and the road that you can see around both shadowy and bright areas. But at nighttime, you're limited. You've either got one or the other. You're going to see in the bright areas or you're going to see in the dark areas, but you can't see both. This creates a situation that we refer to as hard shadows. And in this picture depicts what those hard shadows are. You have the bright light that is shining up there, and in those areas, they're bound by shadows, and you do not have the visual acuity to see in both areas. You cannot see in that dark area. You can't see if somebody's lurking around in that area. And this is what happens when you encounter unshielded lights. Now, I'm gonna hit the next slide here. Somehow, I have to figure out how to press play on this. Does anybody have a suggestion? Can you hit, there's the play button at the bottom. There you go, right there. Thank you so much.
Gotcha! Hi, I'm the Dark Ranger. Did you see me hiding there? Probably not, because this is a bad design for lighting. What we have here are hard shadows. They're created by the fact that this light post was placed right in the middle of two trees. Now, it's not a very good situation for safety because the bad guys know the human eye can't penetrate the hard shadows. So that's where you hide and set up an ambush. And of course, the best thing is the psychology. Next to a light, people think they're safe, so they're gonna have their guard down. It's a dangerous situation.
Okay, so that's a prime example of hard shadows. And somebody made the comment and they said, well, there's no trees out in the desert. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. In the high desert, there's a lot of trees, but it's not just trees that create these hard shadows. Buildings, fences, anything that blocks the light of unshielded light will create a hard shadow, and you are not going to be able to see in the areas of the dark shadows.
Furthermore, in the desert, there may not be trees like that, but this ordinance applies to the entire county, and there are places in the county that would be just exactly like that.
So anyway, this is just a depiction of some hard shadows. If that guy in that's standing at the entrance was standing just a foot back, you probably wouldn't be able to see him at all. And then there's an example of shielding. I mean, it's a pretty dramatic effect. I mean, you're really removing that hard shadow, and now you can actually see beyond that fence line. So here's unshielded, and then there's shielded. Now, if my son would have left his skateboard just beyond that guy where he was standing at, I'd be taking a trip to the ER because you can't see it. Your eyes would adjust to the bright light, and you wouldn't have the visual acuity to see into the dark shadow area. So I'm sure almost everybody has seen that show Cops, where the camera guy's following around the police officers. Often at night when they're pursuing a suspect, that suspect will always find the darkest place to go and hide and try and conceal himself. And at nighttime, if a deputy or a law enforcement official is required to come onto your property to look for an intruder on your property, and you have one of those bright sodium lights or metal halide lights that's shining, that's unshielded, his lights, the deputy's light, his eyes are gonna be affected by that light. His pupils are gonna constrict. He's gonna lose that low light acuity, and it reduces also the effects of his flashlight when he's trying to pursue a suspect in low light. Shielding would prevent that. Okay, Steve, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay.
And during the course of our preparing this presentation, I reached out to the Morongo Basin Sheriff's Substation. I said, what do you think about this thing? And I received the following, and which I would expect to hear. Unfortunately, I am not permitted to officially express an opinion either way. However, from a public safety standpoint, we understand the arguments. Our stance from the sheriff's perspective has always been, we feel a well-conceived light trespass ordinance can preserve the grandeur of our night sky while protecting our public safety interests, which I think is pretty compelling. So, the other, talk about safety, energy, safety, security, and health. And it's important here to keep in mind this first, I'll actually read this. Many species, including humans, need darkness to survive and thrive, from the American Medical Association. So these days we're no longer a farming society where people are up at dawn and in bed at dusk. We're much more of a 24-hour lifestyle. And we have, the human species, Homo sapiens, has evolved from darkness. So we need the rhythms of the natural light-dark cycle, day-night cycle, to be able to prosper and thrive. The American Medical Association as well has identified there are correlations between exposure to harmful lights. This would be lights up in once again, the higher energy spectrum, 5,000, 6,000 degree Kelvin, which is a very blue tinge light. So in looking, so we've got there's an association. Now, we're not saying that it causes it, but there is an association. Many studies have found an association with this. Obesity, problems with obesity, depression, sleep disorders, diabetes, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, as well as cardiovascular disease. So it is a point of serious concern. There have been studies in Spain of workers that work swing shifts to see some correlation between the increase in breast cancer and prostate cancer, and they have found a correlation within that. Harvard University has also done studies on that, as well as the University of Toronto. And the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health has determined and made a statement that disruption to the circadian rhythm it's a problem. It's something that really needs to be thought about. So with health and with the artificial light, at night is when one produces melatonin. And melatonin helps to control our circadian rhythm of light and dark. With a disruption in the production of melatonin, this can disturb our circadian rhythm, and the problems with that can include inducing. Melatonin is used to induce sleep. It boosts the immune system, lowers cholesterol, and enhances the function of those glands that I have mentioned here on the slide. So these issues are not something to be discontinued or discounted, I should say. Here is a slide that we got from talking about other cities in terms of Commissioner, about the effects and savings you might have had in greenhouse gas. Well, this is something that the city of Tucson has done some quantification of this, finding that they are saving in the neighborhood of $2.2 million in annual energy savings. and we know where that energy comes from at night. Coal fire, in that part of the world, quite possibly coal-fired plants was the source of that. It also, the use of LED lighting will extend the service life of many light fixtures, because LED light bulbs can last far, far longer than an incandescent light bulb.
Approximately 10 years.
Yeah, approximately, yeah. So, and at the same time, while saving all this energy, you're having a major reduction in the amount of lumens, the amount of energy that's being expended going up into the sky. Now it goes down onto the ground where it's needed, and we're using less power in order to create that. So it's a good deal. And then during the course of this, we've been looking at trying to look and keep track of other municipalities and jurisdictions that also have a light ordinance. As we've talked about, Tucson and Malibu, Borrego Springs down in Imperial County, or San Diego County, I guess it is. They've recently adopted a night sky lighting ordinance. Julian, just very recently, just within the last couple of weeks, was designated a dark sky community, so they're very concerned about it. Flagstaff, Arizona, with their with the observatory that's quite close to them, has also been very much involved in that. And just yesterday, I discovered Brewster County in West Texas, which is the county in which the McDowell Observatory is located. They just passed a outdoor lighting ordinance. So there's definitely some history of that sort of thing.
And it might be worth mentioning that they actually have a different metric when it comes to light trespass. In Brewster County, Texas, they consider, if you can see the arc tube, the filament, or the LED light source, they consider that to be light trespass.
And this is something that might be worth looking at, because in terms of, they rely more on instead of relying on a measurement of light that falls over a property line, they say if you can see the light source from an adjoining property, then it is light trespass, which is not to say that you can't see the illumination caused by the light on an adjoining property. But if you can't see the actual source of the light, then that would be a shielded light, and light trespass is not occurring. So it's something to definitely to think about on that. Now,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, these are some of the extra benefits.
yeah, so here we go. These are a listing of some of the additional benefits, as it says here, that we're talking about. And I think the first one on the list here, I think is important to think about. This is a reduction in conflict within neighborhoods. If we're talking about neighbors getting upset with each other for this, if you can, so often the source between neighbors, or often the source of conflict between neighbors can be, that bright light that's shining in my window all night.
If I can just interject something really quick here. I know there was considerable talk about how this was going to impact enforcement. If this ordinance is adopted requiring shielded lights, it becomes self-enforcing. You eliminate the light trespass. It's not going to be a big code enforcement issue if this is adopted. If you raise my taxes, I'm going to pay my taxes. If my income tax goes up, and I can complain all I want, but the bottom line is I have to comply with the new law, or the law requiring shielding. So it's not an enforcement nightmare, because it becomes self-enforcing.
And a secondary benefit from this, and we see this out where in the Morongo Basin, is there is a real advantage to the tourism income that's generated by protecting our dark night skies. So while we aren't leading with the idea of this being, and we're not promoting this as being a dark sky ordinance, this is an ordinance to save energy, provide safety and security, and for health. And a byproduct of this would be, we're going to get more tourists coming out to enjoy the night sky. So it's kind of a win-win situation. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center has been in favor of this. They've been participating in our meetings for quite some time, and they are very much in favor of this controlling light for meeting their mission out there, because they need to have a dark sky. Of course, the damage to ecosystems, it's not only human health that is affected by inappropriate and blue lighting, it also affects ecosystems. I'm sure many of you have seen stories about turtle hatchlings that are on the coast in the Caribbean. They, right after they're hatched, they don't know what's happening. They start walking towards the bright light, whereas at which point many of them can be killed. A lot of, so that's something to be aware of.
All right, shall we get our demonstration
Yeah.
going here?
And lastly, it's really important to mention here, is that the dark night sky we need to show respect for our Native American spiritual relationship to the night sky. This is a very important thing for many of the Native American tribes out within the Mojave Desert. Yeah, now let's see if we can't, if we can
Plug that in.
dim the lights and if we can
I'm gonna
close the lights down here, would be great.
So I don't want to blind you guys here, so I'm going to try and point this down
Why don't you start with the shield?
with the shielded, okay?
Yeah, here we go.
I was going to do this just the
I know,
opposite. I was
just
going to
a-
blind them first and then start them with the shield, then turn on the shield.
We sneak away.
All right, this is an example of what is being asked of to be accepted by this by the Planning Commission. This is an example of a shielded light. It's got the wrong color temperature on right now. I think if I turn it off and turn it back on, I get the right color temperature. So this is actually the color temperature. And if you look around, you can see pretty well in all of these areas. It's not casting those really, really super hard shadows. It provides plenty of ample light and you're not blinded by the actual filament or the arc tube or LED. Prime example of what most people are using is this. And this does create hard shadows. Sorry, I'm going to point it down here so I'm
Why
not
don't you shine
blinding
it up
you.
into the cameras
All right.
up behind, yeah, so
There you
people
go.
can
That's
really
one
see.
thing I didn't do. Okay,
Yeah.
shine it up into the cameras there.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a prime example of what most people are using today. Okay, do you want to grab the string lights really quick? And
Yeah,
just demonstrate
yeah,
what
let's,
string lights
Why don't you
look
turn
like?
that shielded light on? We can if we can keep the overall lights down for a second, just to kind of get a sense here. Can we? There we go, good. Thank you. And
Okay.
so here is an example of, just to start to give a sense of what the level of illumination, I hope this will start to go through. But here, Luke, why don't you grab one of these? Here we go, Magda, why don't you grab one here? So these are they're also called fairy lights. And they work out to about 10 lumens per individual LED. There are 20 LEDs per string. So all told, the cumulative effect of all these lights is about 800 lumens if you put them all together. Because 20 times 10, you got 200 per string, times 4, you got 800, about the same equivalent amount of light output as a conventional 60-watt bulb.
And staying under the 4,000 cumulative total wattage, you could add a whole lot more of these.
So you
if
could have-
you desire for ambient lighting.
Yeah, you could have a large number of them.
Okay.
Let's see if I can now, we brought along one other one we thought would be helpful to
What is
show.
the total?
This one, this total string is about,
Would you like a little light there, Steve?
oh, thank you, look at that.
Wrong one. There you go.
Wonderful. So here we go. So Magda, if you'll take some as well, and just
What's the
sort
total output of this?
the total output on this thing, let's just sort of string it out here. It's kind of going, this is 3,700 lumens.
So still allowable,
Yes, so this
still
is
within limits. I mean, that would provide plenty of ambient lighting, and in the immediate area, it's enough to provide safety. Now, granted, they're unshielded, but that's still going to be allowable as long as when the area is no longer occupied, you turn them off.
Yeah, and keeping in mind as well that if one does want to protect your night vision, placing string lights behind a fascia or behind a beam, you can still get the effect of the lights without having the disruption of the total night vision. That's great.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Okay, now we can.
Now we can finish it.
Yeah, this is good. Thanks so much, Magda. Yeah, here we go. You see what happens.
So all of those were allowable under this ordinance?
Yes,
Okay,
that
thank
would
you.
all be allowed.
Except for
The floodlight.
floodlights that were blinding you.
Yeah.
Except for those. So yeah, all of those are allowed.
Are you close? We're,
We are close. I just
Okay.
would like to go through and let me go on to these last couple of. So in closing, this is not a new ordinance. We're going to be modernizing the existing ordinance. The updated ordinance will reduce energy costs and lower greenhouse gas emissions. It will enhance the safety and security of county residents and visitors. And a new light ordinance will contribute to the health and well-being of our residents.
Steve, can I ask a quick question? On the string lights, when you purchase them, are there lumen ratings so that people can know, just like with other light bulbs?
Yes, there are. And many light fixtures now, I won't say all of them, but the majority of them have those specs on the packaging. So it will tell you how many lumens are involved in there, what sort of wattage, what sort of color. You want to make sure you're looking for the 3,000 degree Kelvin. And yes, you can. That information is readily available.
On the packaging,
On
is
the
it on
package.
the string lights themselves? Is there any?
It's the packaging for the string lights. On the fixtures themselves, it's not. You generally wouldn't expect to find that.
One
Yeah.
final thought. I just wanted to just kind of reiterate that we're not asking people to turn off their lights. And there are certain areas that are exceptions around doors and around parking areas. We're not asking them to turn off, we're asking them to shield the lights. That's what this new ordinance or updated ordinance, it keeps saying new. It's not new. You already have a light trespass ordinance, but this additional requirement for shielding would help eliminate that light trespass issue and enhance safety. And so we're not, it's real important to just drive that point home. We're asking for shielding is what would make this, would bring this ordinance up to date.
okay.
Well, thank you. And
Very good. Hang on just a minute. Let's see what we got. Let's go through questions. Commissioner Stoffel?
On the staff presentation, can you pull up the section that had the landscape lights? My question was, we talked about the lighting around like palm trees, but it would seem that if you use the lights that you guys pulled out, the little string lights, and put those around a palm tree, it would be fine, right?
I was just gonna say, I was
You
gonna.
can have them, but you would have to turn them off after no one's out there.
Right.
Yeah, you can still have them, but just make sure you turn them off.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Is that
Because that's
what you're looking for?
not what it says, right? It says they're not permitted.
string lights are not permitted.
For use as landscape, except,
They're not permitted to be used as landscape lighting. And wrapping them around a palm tree, I believe to me, it sounds like,
That would classify as landscaping, but if you were to put it over your patio, I guess we would have to define specifically what we would consider landscaping and what we would consider like your outdoor dining area.
It's a little bit difficult to say if you hang it from an eave, it's okay, and if you wrap it around a tree, it's not okay because it's the exact same thing.
Right.
So maybe a little more definition in it.
Yeah.
But the way that I'm reading this is if you're using it in a landscape, or you could use it 60 days and call it holiday and wrap it wherever you want. And I'm a little concerned about some of the fine details, but we'll get there. Okay. Anything else?
Can I address the group? That's a good point about the landscape lights and wrapping them around a palm tree. That's the whole point of this workshop, is to figure out some common ground. And if we have to say that we're going to acquiesce on the landscape lighting, as long as you turn them off when you're no longer using them. I mean, are you going to light your palm tree all night long? Was that your intent? Didn't you say you were going to have lights shining up to the palm tree? Are you going to have them on all night long?
I think there is some architectural lights are also part of security. And some of them, I mean, I'm thinking about this palm tree wrapped light. What comes to my mind is a Mission Inn, you know? And so that's holiday lighting generally, except it's a lot of it survives past that. I was there the other day, and so there's lights wrapped on trees and so on, and it's part of that atmosphere that they choose. I don't think they turn it off at 11 o'clock, and I don't think there's ever a time that there aren't people wandering around somewhere there. So
Since that's a commercial use, it might be viewed differently. So that might require different, at least from us, different permitting and different reviews if it's a commercial use.
And I think the exercise of listening to your argument and then trying to apply it to places we're not quite sure about, that's exactly what this workshop is designed to do.
Yes.
Is to give us an opportunity. Go ahead.
I think also that if you're saying there's a difference between saying this is a permitted type of light that could be used for landscaping and this is how you could do it, as opposed to saying no. You know, I think that's, to me, it's better to say, hey, sure, you can do that. And these are the suggested types of ways to do that to still have us, you know, as opposed to saying not permitted. That's my thought.
I agree. I mean, that's precisely why we're here at this workshop. I think the shielding is kind of the quintessential element of this this ordinance, and the string lighting and the landscape lighting and stuff, as long as we can have them extinguish them by a certain time, and maybe there is a different ordinance for commercial buildings that use them for ambiance. That's the point of being here.
And how many lumens of string lighting are permitted? You know, for instance, in this West Texas ordinance that just passed, they've chose 6,000 lumens as the cap for string lighting. However, they limited the color temperature on their lights. Also has to be LED, but it would be 2,700 degree Kelvin, a warmer tone. And as a point of information, the IDA is now recommending that LEDs be limited to 2,200 degree Kelvin. So the lower the temperature you go, the easier it is on your eyes while still providing the same amount of illumination.
Ambient light. Very good. Commissioner Gagora.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the light illustrations. I did read I saw that the Julian was highlighted as a dark sky community. And I noticed that one of the benefits that was mentioned in the presentation was that Joshua Tree would also follow that lead, or what would that process be to get to that level?
We have already done that. I started doing this in 2006 with a lighting inventory of everything that we had at the park, and then a funding request, and then all our non-compliant light fixtures were removed and replaced with light compliant, or with the night sky compliant light fixtures, and including the benefit of using LED lights to reduce energy consumption.
So from my understanding, Joshua Tree overlaps with Riverside County too. So is that something that you just took and just implemented in both counties sections?
It's park-wide. We implemented this lighting program park-wide, regardless of what county it is. It applies to the park. It doesn't apply necessarily to which county you're in. It's ubiquitous throughout the park.
Okay.
And
from my understanding in this ordinance, its intention is to have the reduction after 11 p.m. Is that accurate?
If the area is no longer occupied, like if you're entertaining at your patio, and yes, you would extinguish the lights after 11 p.m. or when people are no longer present. Again, there are certain exceptions, like around doorways and entryways for security. Those lights would probably never be extinguished even after 11. We'd like to see you go onto a motion sensor at that point in time. But again, part of this workshop is to figure out a common ground for everybody so it's acceptable. Shielding is key. That's a key point to energy conservation, greenhouse gas, and safety.
So with the shielding, would that be permissible with what you're recommending, or is shielding only going to be what's required after 2 years? I'm trying to figure out what that is. So, for instance, I'm in my backyard with my family. We're there till 1 a.m. We use the string lights. We use the other lights that you presented. Is that does it? How do you collectively understand whether it's at the 4,000 lumens or things of the sorts? I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to.
So the lumens are printed on the package when you purchase the string lighting. If you're out in your backyard until 1 o'clock and you're enjoying your string lights, well, continue to enjoy them until 2 if that is what you desire.
Yeah.
As long as you're out there, you need to have lights, and you need to have them for safety and security. Now, the other lights fixtures that you may have in your back might not be compliant, which means they might not be shielded. If you put shielding around them, if you put a shielded fixture up there, you'll find you'll actually enhance your safety and security and tripping hazards, and you can reduce the wattage and have energy savings as well. But there are exceptions.
That answered my question.
There are exceptions to some lights can remain on because they're adjacent a door or a parking area or something.
And it's also important to note that the ordinance as proposed, the curfew in the mountain and desert regions is 11 o'clock. There is not a curfew in the valley region.
Thank you.
All right, so let's, you're good?
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to the other commissioners. Vice Chair Allard.
Hey, thank you very much. Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Some noise pollution here. Very good presentation. You've motivated me to take down my Christmas lights tonight. Early in the presentation, I think we were confusing shielding with energy conservation. If you take a 60-watt incandescent light bulb and just shield it to the ground, it doesn't automatically start using less energy, correct?
That's correct. But the point is with shielding, you will direct usable light down. So you'll be able to use a lower number of lumens to provide the same level of illumination on the ground. If you have an unshielded 60-watt bulb, just half of that light is going up in the air. If you have a shielded fixture, it will put that light down on the ground where it is needed.
Okay, so if you're using a 60 you may be able to drop to a 25 or something. And if you go to the newer LED bulbs, then you really start cutting the power use down.
That's correct. That's correct. And
So shielding alone doesn't do it. Shielding in conjunction with a different type of fixture or a smaller wattage is what has you save money.
That is correct. Shielding alone does not do it, but what shielding does do is it eliminates the light trespass. And your ordinance already on the books is about light trespass. That's what it's about, is light trespass. The shielding would eliminate the light trespass by using a lower wattage bulb. All the light that normally would be cast upward in the air is cast downward, and you can effectively use a reduced wattage bulb to achieve the same or better desired effect.
My last comment was, and thanks for the presentation. I noticed when I'm driving down a street with the new modern street lights that are directed down with the LEDs, you seem to have a street light, a bunch of dark, and then another street light, which is fine. I just like maybe law enforcement or public works or something to weigh in throughout the course of, not today, but in general, as to what type of light cone we're trying to throw off for public safety. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howie.
Yeah, hi. Again, thanks for all the information. I think the shielding aspect is great. Although, I live in the valley, so it'd be a little bit different because I was trying to figure out if you had palm trees and you had, everyone wants to illuminate a ground light up to show the palm tree at night. So I guess in those areas that this would be restricted after 11 p.m., you'd have to turn those off from that standpoint. But no, I think most of my questions have been answered from this presentations.
All right.
If I could,
Perfect. Thank you.
one comment about using uplight onto palm trees. If the source of the light is above eye level, it would not necessarily be creating that hard shadow effect. If the source of the light was down at ground level, shining up onto the palm tree, then you're starting to have the glare problems that would start to affect your public safety.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Steve, I had promised you a couple minutes of rebuttal. Are there things that you want to respond to? I'm not looking to necessarily just reinforce points, but if there are things that you think were either that need to be straightened out, I want to give you that opportunity. So Ignacio, just hang on. Don't wander too far because we may have questions for you. But I want to get Steve's done, and then we're sort of finished with testimony. We can go to the planning commissioners.
Great, thanks so much. I do appreciate this. First of all, it's a question of talking. There's been a lot of talk about enforcement and code enforcement. We don't want to talk about code enforcement. What we want to talk about is we don't want to get to code enforcement. We want to get to educating and informing people and to be aware of the problems of light trespass. I think that it should be the prime approach that I think should be taken is let's make a public effort to expose this problem so that people can be aware of it, so that we don't go. We don't want to. We love code enforcement. We don't want to see the code enforcement. Sure. So I think that is really very important. Something to also, there is no lumens per area. There's no discussion about, in terms of Commissioner Allard talking about that. That is not part of this ordinance. This ordinance specifically does not talk about how many lumens can be placed on a particular property. Now, different from this ordinance that was passed in West Texas recently, which has a maximum number of lumens per acre that are allowed. That is not the case here. In our case, we have 4,000 lumens of string lights that can be applied wherever you want on your particular piece of property. In terms of response to, with the passage of this ordinance, I believe this would then provide an opportunity when people, at the time, would be good publicity that this ordinance is being passed. Then if someone calls and says, hey, this guy has an uncomplying light, well, then the county should have and be prepared to have a canned letter that talks about all the issues of light trespass, about what needs to be done, with a very clear description of what's happening with the time limit that's coming along the way. So I think that's very important. Also, I'd like to correct, and thanks very much for the clarification about the number of households. You know, this county, a big county. It is 640,000 households in the entire county, but I very much appreciate that it's 110,000 within the unincorporated area. So it's only $1 million+ that's going to be saved. But
That's fair.
thanks very much.